What's going on? Nice background. Do you have some sort of a high tech, well designed yurt, or what's the deal?
Yeah. So this is the future guest house, but it's my current dwelling because in 2019 fire came through and wiped out everything in the Malibu fires.
Yeah,
Um, but as you know, and we'll get into, pressure can help perspective. Um, so there's a lot of gifts that came as a result of that. Um, and so yeah, I'm just building my dream property and sustainability and everything I wanted to do, except that the universe had an accelerated button
yeah.
that it pushed. Um, so yeah, I'm in a bitched out yurt right now.
That's
Um,
a that's a pretty crazy life experience. I
oof.
mean, even if you have good perspective on your stuff,
Hmm.
it's still your stuff. Like I
Yeah.
remember when we were um, living in Santa Monica when I was like 12 years old or something, we got robbed pretty bad.
Hmm.
And it was just so wild to walk into our apartment and see all of your stuff that someone else had trashed or stolen. And there was a specific thing that was going on there that I won't get into, but they not only stole stuff, but they trashed stuff. So they
Hmm.
like graffitied the walls and they cut my mom's clothes
Hmm.
with scissors, and they like poured gallons of water on our couch. And it's not a direct connection, but I just thought about it, because stuff is, it holds so much energy. It holds so much history. So it's one thing to have your stuff messed with or stolen. It's another thing to have it disappear.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that
And I
must have
think
been wild.
and I think what you're saying is correct. And the flippant thing is, and most people don't know what to say to you after that. But the flippant thing is, good thing it's just stuff, right?
Hmm.
And it is and it isn't.
Right.
Because it literally is the extension of you.
Mm.
And it is a part of you, and you've created your external as you see it, subconsciously or consciously. So, and as you know, everything has an energy and everything is energy. So therefore, it isn't just stuff.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, from your perspective, that's a mine too, but it's a different thing. It's a like being, having things stolen. There's a certain violation there that's pretty pronounced, and you feel violated because someone came into your space without asking and
Yeah.
destroyed it. uh
It's a human violation, whereas like in your
yeah.
situation, it was a violation from nature, but one could argue that we're violating nature first. So there's a lot to unpack there, no pun intended. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you lost your home, and I'm glad that it kind of like inspired you to create your new dream space that
Yeah.
uh yeah.
Well, thank you. And and I was kind of reading up on your past too, and um I'm sorry that you didn't have a father that was guiding you, but I'm also um I celebrate the place that you got to, around celebrating not having a dad, and cultivating the person, part of the person who you are and where you came from. So maybe tell that story a little bit, because I think you and I share a similar transmutation
Mm.
idea to pressures and stressors in life, even though it may take uh, time or whatever. But tell us a little bit about the genesis of that, and maybe some of the inspiration around your father and not having him around.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I think it's kind of like the beginning of the conversation. It's all about the angles.
Exactly.
And I've taken pretty much every angle you could take on this. And I realized that some were not serving me at a certain point, and I proactively sought out a different angle. I was raised by a single mother. I have siblings on my father's side, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. I've met one of the brothers once, which was really, really wild because I was like in my mid 30s and literally just went into a coffee shop in Brooklyn and looked around to see who kind of looked like me. Wow. And lo and behold, he kind of looked like me. And so we had a whole conversation. And that was just a really interesting experience. But I haven't met the rest of the siblings, and I didn't meet my dad until I was 15. As I said, we lived in Santa Monica. My mom's a school teacher. She taught at Culver City Middle School and taught history. And then she taught special education as well. And I think that I had a lot of unresolved issues that I wasn't even aware of at the time. You know, when you're young and you're dealing with some sort of a trauma, if you don't have the capacity to process it, you just kind of move into your life unconsciously. And I had a lot of, I think, anger issues, a lot of depression issues, a lot of feeling inadequate and insecure. And that caused me to act out in various different ways or to disappear or both. And I externalized my identity a lot as a kid because since I didn't have that strong male role model, I was always looking outside of myself for who I was supposed to be. And my mom was an incredible mom. She did the absolute best that she could. I'm eternally grateful to her. But it wasn't the type of foundation where I felt confident in who I was. And I guess falling in love with hip hop and having that as an expression was almost like my first form of meditation where I could access some of those unresolved negative emotions and alchemize them into something positive. And when my father and I finally met, it was certainly an experience. He's not with us anymore. I can count on 2 hands how many times we were in the same room. We certainly didn't develop a close relationship or anything like that over the years. But ultimately, I think I moved from that rage of wishing life was different to acceptance and gratitude. And through my poetry, I've been able to pass on that gratitude to other people who've been able to mirror their own life experiences within the art and make some pretty positive changes to forgive themselves and to forgive others and to move into life with empowerment.
Yeah, clearly, if anyone gets to hear your work, it is so strikingly beautiful. You freaking got me to. I was watching your Amazon performance on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And fucking got me tearing up twice within 15 minutes. And so I want to, number one, thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. By the way, we didn't chat about this beforehand, but if you want me to perform, I'm happy to. We can keep this very casual.
Yeah, I'd love for you to give everyone listening a glimpse of that, without a doubt. I didn't want to presume, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Do you want me to do a piece about my father now? Feels like maybe that's appropriate.
It is very, very appropriate.
Okay, cool. So this piece is called Father Time. I'm staring at the number, wondering if I should call. I can hear the tick-tock from the clock on the wall as it meshes with the thump thump beat of my heart. Sometimes getting something started is the hardest part. I didn't meet my dad until I was 15. I'd seen his photograph, but his image was sickening. A coward with a dick, but no balls to back it up. See, when he left me as a kid, I had cause for acting up. The funny thing about hate is the person you hate doesn't feel that hate. You feel that hate, but wait, the weight can be too much for a person to take. And personally, I was hurt, so I just locked it away. I was angry all the time, and I didn't know why. I couldn't handle my rage, so I would hide it inside, pretending everything was fine, became a daily pastime. Time passed, and I started to believe in my lies. I took it out on my mom because she raised me alone. The rage that I couldn't own had left me totally numb. It was like landmines in my mind that I didn't understand. So when the boy inside cried, the young man outside yelled. I think I learned about my masculinity from TV. The people weren't real, so I knew they couldn't leave me. I would sit there for hours right in front of the tube. The images that I saw were my depiction of truth. It's manhood in a box, and I bought into it. The censorship of anything inside of me that's sensitive. The sentence is a lifetime of tears suppressed in a stone face, an overblown ego they've distracted through a paper chase. Back when I was 9, I imagined in my mind that my father was a spy working for the FBI, and that's why he couldn't stop by, write, or drop a line. He was off saving our lives from the bad guys, but that was just a lie that I used to get by so that you wouldn't see the tears welling up in my eyes. When you're rejected by the person that you're created by, you secretly feel like you don't have a right to your life. I thought if I confronted him, then it would make it all right. But since I couldn't forgive him, it just recycled my spite. I remember meeting him for the first time. Every time a person passed by, I would ask, "Mom, is that him? I look a little like him, right? No? Oh. What about that guy?" And that was what it was like to meet the man that gave me my life. To shake his hand and look into his eyes. We talked till he apologized, then said our goodbyes. I walked away on my own and I began to cry. Now, for years after that, I acted like it's all resolved. I had told him what I thought, so I figured problem solved, but it just re-evolved. My insecurities were eating at my mental health. I took it out on the world because I hated myself. That's when I finally decided I needed some help. I opened up. I started writing and sharing about my past. I got honest with myself and I started chipping at my mask. I looked into the mirror and confronted what I saw, accepting the reflection by embracing every flaw, then directing the connection into breaking down the walls by reflecting the perfection of the God inside us all. I stopped focusing on everything that I had been hateful for. And I started focusing on everything I could be grateful for. And personally, there is a lot that I can be thankful for. If pain is dragging you down, just cut the ankle cord. That's when the weight lifted. And I really started living. It's when my hate shifted and I really started giving. It's when my fate twisted. It was like an ego exorcism. Your mind state can be the most powerful of prisons. My father never played catch with me or gave advice. But if nothing else, that man gave me my life. And that's enough for me. If that is all he can ever give, because I'm appreciative for every day I get to live. And even though I don't need my dad to validate me, I thought that I should write this poem to thank him for creating me. Because every moment that we are alive is like a gift. And if that's not enough to forgive, then what is? I'm staring at the number, wondering if I should call. I can hear the tick-tock from the clock on the wall as it meshes with the thump-thump beat of my heart. Sometimes getting something started is the hardest part. I pick the phone up. The dial tone begins to sing. I punch his number into it, and it begins to ring. Ring. Hello, Mike. Hey, man, it's Adam, your son.
Whoa.
Where does it take you?
It's just that I mean, my father was anything like that, but I lost him, and he struggled and alcoholism and all of that. So obviously it takes me there, but it also takes me directly to you, and that is a human to human, and having to go through that, having to remind your dad of his own son, and it's just oof.
I'm sorry that you lost your pops, and I feel closer to you. Just by you being able to be vulnerable like that from a place of strength, makes me respect you and connect with you.
Thank you. And it's it's interesting how I could say that I feel as close to my father now as I did when he was alive. I feel him, I see him, like I was working on another book, and I'm digging into stuff that he taught in his life. He it's like, and so I can feel it. It's like, so the relationship to me is as real as, of course, you miss his physical presence, right? But also, when you were talking about the gratitude of him giving you your life, it's almost like it is the greatest gratitude, and everything else we're just trying to, anything that they didn't do or didn't do so well, we spend all this time, number one, lugging it around.
Yeah.
And number two, maybe life slapping you around a little bit to get you to wake up to this forgiveness and to the perspective and to that angle. And for you to get to the angle of that utter gratitude of that he just gave you your life. So isn't that enough? I can relate.
I mean, it's so hard to even be born. I mean, everybody is here because of it, at least, hopefully, until technology races ahead. But yeah, we're all pretty much, you know, going against 350 to 400 million sperm in order to get to the egg. So we kind of won this cosmic race already. And yet we somehow have convinced ourselves that we're mistakes.
Yeah.
Every single person is a miracle. I mean, it is an absolute miracle to be alive. But there's a difference between understanding that conceptually and understanding it experientially. Like I even remember when I wrote that poem, it was a manifestation. I wasn't quite able to embody it yet. And I just did a show in New York like a month ago. And I met this incredible couple. And after the show finished, they were in the backstage area. And I started talking to the guy, and he was like, yeah, man, I've been wanting to meet you for like 17 years or something like that. And I was like, wow, okay. Like, well, I'm glad, you know, we're having this moment now. And he said, can I tell you a story? And I said, yeah. So I'm going to get some of the details wrong, and I don't want to like share any private information, but it was really powerful for me. So I'll pass it along because I feel like it relates to the subject we're talking about. He had seen this video of me doing this poem. I was in this small little theater, and he somehow started watching it. You know, they're from Philly, and I think 2,000 people saw that video, Darin. And I remember at the time, because I was dealing with my own struggles. I was dealing with substance stuff. I was dealing with insomnia. I was, you know, couldn't keep a relationship, hadn't figured out how to monetize my art yet. So my life was pretty much all over the place. And I remember like the fact that this only got like the 2,000 views at the time, I used that as an opportunity to like replay my victim story, you know, like, nah, nobody watched it, like that type of thing. I thought nothing had happened. So he tells me he had watched it and he got so inspired that he decided to find his dad. He'd never met him. He was in his early 20s. So he somehow tracks him down. The guy's in the military. He flies out to where the guy is on the base, goes into the office, finds out that his father had retired the day before and was not on the premises. But they give him an address. He goes to the address. He knocks on the door. This guy comes to the door. It's not his dad. Gives him another address. Goes to the other address. Same thing happens, but the guy gives him a number. So he calls. Similar to the poem. He's like, hey, you know. And I had called my dad. I mean, that was all real, but I hadn't quite reached that place of forgiveness yet. I was still working through it, and the poetry was helping me to do that. So anyway, he starts a relationship with his dad, okay? Start a slow relationship. They actually become friends. He winds up reintroducing his dad to his mom. They fall in love again, and they end up getting married. He brings up a picture of his whole entire family, his two siblings, his two kids now know his grandfather. He shows me pictures of him and his dad. He's like, my dad's my best friend. My parents are more in love. You know, you couldn't even imagine. And he was like, it was inspired by the poem. And I literally looked at him and I gave him a hug. We like chatted for a long time. We've been in communication on email. If I go to Philly, I'm going to go to dinner with his family. But the crazy thing to me was that he actualized my poem before I did. And I had thought nothing happened. And so it's just such a funny lesson that just because you think nothing happened doesn't mean it's not happening. And every single thing you do and every single thing you say, it's like a seed that you're planting in someone's mind or in their heart. So what do you want them to grow? You might never find out the impact that you make in a just random conversation with somebody. But, we're all walking mirrors and we can change each other's lives for the better. And the best place to start is with vulnerability. And that's what I try to do through my art.
Yeah, well, clearly. And it's, we're so funny, these humans. It's like, it's down to these angles. So for you, you look at these videos going, it didn't have a big enough number, right? It didn't have enough views. So our reductionism of our brain, our small little ego, goes, that's the algorithm I'm choosing to use for my success of getting this out. And then pleomorphically, the universe is working a trillion, billion, godzillion angles of everything. And it creates literally a family again. Like, you seeded the health and healing of an entire family. And then what is that family? The love and the connection that has been created as a result of that seed that you created and planted, then seeded this entire lineage.
I mean, to be clear, he did the work.
Of course,
So
but
I don't take any ownership over it, but I do feel inspired by his inspiration.
Yeah.
Like, he thought that he was telling me something, oh, I'm so inspired by you. I was like, bro, I'm so inspired by you.
Yeah. Well, therein lies the not one-sided. It's that regenerative sharing, right? It's like you're celebrating each other in that closed loop energy cycle that should be what life is from that love perspective, from that giving perspective. And there's no taking when it comes to that. It's only the shared cycle. So, man, that's an incredible story. And for you to be able, because imagine the gift that you got by him getting to tell you. It doesn't mean that it still didn't happen if he didn't tell you. That's what we have to realize. Every syllable and word and action that we take is literally a river of energy that's going out in the world. And sometimes we get to see the effect of it, sometimes we don't.
99.9% of the time we don't.
Right.
By the way, for good or bad, if you believe in good and bad on the physical plane,
Yeah.
Like, how many people listen to an episode of yours? What's your average?
I don't know, hundreds of thousands or something. I don't know.
That is so unquantifiable that we're having a conversation right now that potentially, let's choose 100,000 people, that 100,000 people could be listening to. And yet it's not more important than one.
Exactly.
So there it is.
Exactly. So I'm super curious. I mean, because I didn't know all of this other stuff about you, and I was like, holy shit, you're writing music and from Selena Gomez and Miley Cyrus and like on and on. So I have two things. I was stoked to see all of that quantifiable things that you got to move forward in that train of InQ. Number one, congrats on all of that.
Thank you.
And I'm super curious though because clearly so let me just say, InQ, is that in question? Is that what it stands for?
Yeah, and it's silly now to have a nickname as a grown-ass man, but I got it when I was 15 years old. I was always asking questions, and I was looking for a rap name, and my buddy started calling me Inquiry. And then people just started calling me InQ, and then people started calling me Q. And, now I'm 43 years old, and it feels as much of my identity as Adam does. So
Well, it's a good place. If you're in question, you're in creation, right? So if you're inquiring and inquisitive, and it clearly is the only way. You had to be in that space. You had to actually embody that in order for, from my perspective, to get out what it is that you're presenting and creating to the world. So you successfully and continue to embody that by the works that you're doing, and clearly it just affected me. What for you? So hip hop obviously was a massive influence,
Huge.
and then when was it that you gave yourself permission, or how did that happen where, oh, I'm this Adam Jewish guy from Santa Monica? How did you get to that point where I am gonna put words to a poetry, a rhythm? Like, how did that happen? And or what had to move inside of you therapeutically to get you to that point? Like, what's that part of the story?
Well, I was talking about freestyling earlier, just very briefly. And um, in retrospect, I have a philosophy about why I was so drawn to it. And it's because it's kind of like verbal rock climbing, or I don't know, like surfing maybe would be an example for you, but like, you're in the moment because you have to be. If you start thinking about something else, the train falls off of the tracks when you're freestyling. And so it's a forced meditation. And sometimes I would say shit that would surprise me. What a gift when your mouth is moving so fast that you're surprised by what you say. That means you're going to get things out of your system that you wouldn't normally. And it was also just an empowering experience, battling people and, doing the whole thing. And then when I was 19 years old, I wound up at an open mic for poets called the Poetry Lounge in Los Angeles. And I just started doing my rapping a cappella at the beginning. And I was so moved by the environment and the community that I went back every single week. And it turned out to be one of, if not the biggest open mic in the country. So, it's back up and running. It was on a pause for the pandemic, but, they still probably get 250 to 350 people every Tuesday night that show up to listen to people who've signed up on an open mic list. And it's like church without religion. And I was hooked. And so over the years of being there, I ended up being on HBO's Def Poetry Jam, and we had a team that won the National Poetry Slam Championships. And that community became like a family for me. And I think that they kind of, as a community, helped shepherd me into my style that was changing as I was finding my voice.
Yeah, because, it cut to, I'm reminded when I saw you at Rich's place, when I first,
Rich.
yeah, shout out to Rich Roll, at his birthday party. I first saw you. It was impacted then. I never forgot. So that was at Tom Shadyack's little gathering in Venice, I think, right? And that was a decade ago.
I know.
Had to be. Like, wow. And then I turn around and I'm like, you're popping up. And literally, dude, it was like that Waterkeeper event. Then I think I saw you somewhere else just in passing. And then all of a sudden you're at Rich's, all within a few weeks. And then I went up to you, introduced myself, like saying, "Oh, I'm crying on my podcast with you."
Hey, we just throw our hands up and take the ride, right?
That's right.
Well, Tom Shadyack is an amazing human being as well. Rich and Tom, both huge inspirations to me over the years. I haven't talked to Tom in a really long time, but he's always a fun person to take the ride of the conversation with,
Oh man, he is a without a doubt. I saw him, 2 years ago at the Nantucket Project, and we just like embraced, like we were hadn't seen each other in a long time. It was a great surprise. But so yeah, man, you've been consistent, and I'm sure the carving out your thing and making something that's so vulnerably, artistically, incredibly unique, and then actually manifesting and creating a life and a pursuit and a job out of it, it's got to be rewarding as hell. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it is rewarding and challenging. Those are two great words for it. Some days I wake up and I'm like slightly annoyed that the art form doesn't have more of a well-paved path, because I believe in poetry so much. Like, I'm not only a poet, I'm a fan. Some of the best experiences I ever had artistically was watching other poets on stage. And I want little kids to be like, I want to be a poet when I grow up. And I think that that's not really happening in popular culture the way that it should, or the way that it could, or hopefully the way that it will. So some days that's a bit annoying, because I'm like, oh, I wish there was like a machine that could completely take over. And then some days I wake up and I'm just so excited by that, because there's not like a lot that is defining what it is that I do, or confining what it is that I do. And that means it's kind of infinite possibilities. We're still creating the art form in real time, even though it's like the oldest thing. It's storytelling. And I have the belief that everybody is a poet. In popular culture, it hasn't quite found its legs to be exposed or monetized. And so I'm happy to be surfing that wave and trying to do my part in that. And it's taken a long time to figure out what my career is. But now, as you said, I have the Amazon Prime special. I have a book of poetry called Inquire Within, which I actually have right next to me. And I have, all sorts of workshops that I do for companies and corporations, and speaking gigs, where I get to travel around the country and the world. And then I do live performances where I get a chance to meet my fans, and I do collaborations with artists or with brands. And so every day is different. And, people ask me what my favorite poem is. I always say the next one. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Sign of a true creator right there. What do you think that, because I'm, as you're talking, I'm intimately aware of language, and language as power, language and words. And, you said it, storytelling. And at the same time, everyone, everywhere saying anything is saying something.
Totally.
Right. But it's like, what do you perceive the gap is? I have my own ideas. But as someone that has taken words, intention, rhythm, and put a piece of art together using the same words that have gotten someone in the door saying hello in the conversations, but you have taken and encapsulated it into this thing that as I'm hearing you and as I listen, as I was captivated by you moments ago, I also feel like language has lost something, and that conversation has lost. What is it missing? What's missing in our lexicon right now? There's something not here.
That's a great question. I'm happy to jump into it, but I was actually curious to hear what your thoughts were, because you said you had thoughts around it. So I'll go first, or you can go first, but I'd really like to know what yours are.
Well, one who talks a lot is boring. Like, so, you know what I mean? So like, if there's just a vomit of words, I find myself doing this all the time. Sometimes I'm not even clear on the answer I'm answering or the space I'm going into, and I'm kind of just getting there. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
I think it also depends on intention, but let me answer it this way. Small talk, like, is
Right.
is a pandemic, right?
Totally.
It is like the loss of connection. And you have connection in a lot of different ways: a hug, a touch, a look, all of that is within connection. But in terms of the words, in terms of radical honesty, and that's what you and I'm obsessed, in a certain, if I could use a term, with radical honesty. If something is uneasy
Mm.
and something is needs to be communicated, as it's literally just, it's so there and it's so uncomfortable that I know I need to have it. It is so good to do it and to make that proverbial call and to take that conversation to that place, or that healing that needs to happen, or that wrong that you feel was you were wronged in. Like, so I think what I'm saying is the intentional honesty is more and more vacant within the vast majority of people. Most people don't want to go into those conversations because they want to just keep things lighter. And those are the rooms that I leave.
That was really well said. I like small talk as a pandemic. I feel like that's a poem that you should write.
That's yours. Go for it. You could.
No. I would help facilitate. I would love for you to write small talk is a pandemic. I think there's a real kernel there that could pop.
Okay. Well, that's a collab.
Fair enough, man. Yeah, look, even aside from technology, which is just so wild to me, I still have a hard time understanding that we're just not in the same space, but we're able to communicate through these pixels, and that other people are able to listen while we do it at, by the way, any time in the future. That whenever they're listening to this could be, in 3 weeks, or it could be in 5 years. Who knows?
Yeah.
So that's just mind blowing to me. But then just take it back a notch. It's really mind blowing to me that I'm just making noises right now, and you like understand what it is that I'm saying, and vice versa. I don't think that language is the truth. No matter how well you're using it, it's a reflection of the truth. But at least I'm trying to reflect the truth. A lot of people want to choose a different angle, once again, for that reflection. They want to be seen in a certain way. I was even thinking earlier this morning, when I was thinking about the podcast, I was like, oh, what am I going to do on the podcast? And then I said, I don't know. We'll just kind of rap and see what comes up, And then I had this like funny thought, because I was thinking about, well, do I have an agenda? And I don't have an agenda. My agenda was just kind of to connect with you and be surprised. But when you have an agenda, you have to remember your agenda. You have to remember who you are inside of that agenda. And boy, does that take a lot of energy, man. And then you have to remember who you are. Even think about those words: to remember who you are rather than to discover who you are. It's just a world of difference. So yeah, I want to be more in discovery, in my life, in my love, in my art. And I want to communicate that discovery to people through my words.
Well, you're doing it. You are. I mean, it's. I don't shed tears that much at all, and I did just watching your Amazon special, Amazon
Which one
Prime
hit you,
special.
by the way? Which one did
I
it?
don't. You know what? It was weirdly. It was when everyone stood up and you were making everyone do this, and I was just so. I don't know if I was tuning into you, facilitating, tuning into the thing that I perceived you doing was making a connection to not only you with them, but them to themselves and them to the people around you that we so easily encapsulate and kind
Yeah.
of distance ourselves from. So I was aware that you were just deconstructing that whole thing. And that preparation was such an invitation that I was like, fuck, that's good. Like, but you did it to me as well. Like, so I'm watching it and I was then aware of the connection that was created. Therefore, the connection that I then had to watching a freaking special to then start shedding a tear.
Mm.
That was the first, and I believe me, I wasn't expecting that. And I don't know, I forget the other time, but that special was so cool because I expected you to just go bang, 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 like you're set
Yeah.
one after another, but you stopped and you were super funny as well. And you just told like stories within the stories that I found hilarious and funny and touching.
Thank you,
So,
man.
so whatever the hell you're doing it uniquely, and I know that. And with that, yeah, you need machetes and chainsaws and other forms of excavating to
Right.
create a path. And I can only imagine the millions of times that you told yourself, I want to hear about that. Like the millions of times you had to have said to yourself, what the fuck am I doing? What am I going to do with my life? How can I be a
Totally.
poet and live?
I
Like,
mean, yeah, countless. You know what's interesting about what you were saying, though, from the show perspective, was you were talking about the opening. So to anyone who's listening to this, if you go watch the show or if you come to any of my shows, I'll always do some sort of an opening. Now I have to make it pandemic friendly. But even when I did the last 4 public shows I found a way to connect the audience. And the idea is get everybody on their feet, get everybody in their bodies, get them moving around, allow them to connect with each other. Because when people come into a room to watch a performance, they're like on their own individual islands, basically. So instead of having a bunch of islands, the idea is to create an ocean. And so I have people like massage each other and jump up and down and, just do silly things with their voices. And it's always like slightly strange for people. They're out of their comfort zone. They're a little bit embarrassed, but they always love the feeling after they sit down. And really, I mean, I wish there was a way to quantify the energy in the room before something like that and after something like that, because it is palpable for me as a performer and for everyone in the audience. You don't feel like you're in your own little silo anymore. You actually have looked people in the eyes, introduced yourselves. And very simple things like that can go a really long way, not only in performance, but in life. Sometimes you just have to like consciously create the structure for it.
well,
And the second question was, I'm sorry, did you want to say it?
no, go ahead. Yeah.
The second thing you were asking is basically like, how many times did I want to quit?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, all the time. I was always like, what am I doing? where am I going? Uh, I went to San Francisco State for like a year, and then came back. I was going to SMC for a little bit. I got into a fist fight on campus. I was like in the most remedial math class you could be in, and I was like, I don't want to like take. I was in such a remedial math course, Darin, that I would have had to take like 5 classes, like pass 5 classes in order to get even to a class that counted towards my college credit. Right. And I'm like, this isn't even what I want to be doing. So then I just decided I'm going to pursue art full time. And I was broke for a long time. I mean, I barely made it by from, whatever that was, 19 to probably 31. And the only way that I really started making money was because of the songwriting. I got lucky enough to get a publishing deal with a production team, record company, production company called Rock Mafia. And they just had seen my poetry and they were like, maybe he can add some edgy lyrics to some of these pop songs. And that was when I started to have some financial success, which gave me the foundation to very consciously build back towards what I wanted to create for poetry. And, over the years after that, my poetry started evening out monetarily with my songwriting, and then it surpassed it. But I wouldn't be where I was without that trampoline. And so that was a beautiful artistic experience as well as a foundational financial one. And every time I wanted to quit, I would write another poem. It was like, I was like, I'm done with this. I'm going to go work here, or maybe I'll go back to college or whatever I thought. And then like, I'd have something else to say and I'd write it. And then I'm like, well, shit, I should probably share this with somebody. And then I would. And so I don't know. I don't know that I chose my art more than my art chose me. But I was obsessed, man.
Well, that is to always showing up and to always overcoming. And also just, I mean, those are cliche words to say, but it's what I find with pursuits of passion and purpose, they won't, that itch won't go away. Like it's and I kind of laughed inside when you said, like, what kind of job can I find? What thing can I put all of me into to then fit into the society, to then have money to buy the stuff like, it just, that's how I was laughing. Like, this whole thing went off in my head. And that's weirdly how we have programmed even our children coming up through school. Very rarely is there a class that's going, well, Tom Shadyac, he had what, a film and life. Yep. His class at Pepperdine. I came in a couple times and like, I don't think Pepperdine knew what the hell was going on until they knew what was going on. And he was just like flinging life stuff at people, and they were having real conversations. So it's like the preparatory aspect of school is algorithmically so limited that you're like, okay, so I'm gonna strangle my spirit and then go into this thing. Like, and so I'm going back to you went back, you kept going back to your art because you wanted to. And I'm sure there was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure to then create from there too. And I just think anyone listening, you're looking at all of his works, but the millions of times that Adam here wanted to quit, we have to realize that pressure is coming. Like,
Yeah, I want to build on that too for anyone who's listening that's working on a creative pursuit or an entrepreneurial pursuit or any pursuit really in life that they're passionate about, but it's not working the way that you want it to. You're not seeing the results that you expected to have. Uh, just know that like all the hours that you put in, they don't go anywhere. Once again, just because you think nothing happened doesn't mean it's not happening. And so just think about incremental and accumulative growth. Just continue to put in your minutes. Let the minutes be hours. Let the hours be days, into weeks, into years. And you will own that time cellularly. And you will become, if not a master at something, you will have a wisdom from your experience that will be valuable, whether it shows up the way you imagined or whether it transforms into something else. And so I think that's just really important to think about. The other thing that's important to think about is when people don't know what their passion is, and they're like, I don't know what my passion is, or I don't know what my purpose is. Just start in a simpler place. Start with, what are you curious about? What are you slightly interested in? You know, because purpose is so big, but curiosity can be moment to moment. And then you can experiment with that curiosity and see if it moves up the list. See if it goes from curiosity to interest to passion to purpose. Because it's just a huge world out there and a huge world in here. And there's no destination. It's just a journey. So keep exploring, keep discovering.
yeah, and I think that what you said is so important, because the purpose is a monster, and the feather touch of curiosity, just look into it, and it feels, when weighed against purpose, some of those curiosities can feel so insignificant. Like someone could be sitting here going, I don't know why I'm thinking about this, because it's not an obsession of mine, but NFTs, right? They're just going off, like they're using art and then they sell these things, and I don't even know how it works. But these people are coming out of nowhere, and money's being exchanged, and art's being created, and NFTs are being manifested, and like some people just got together and created this stuff, and it now is perceived value.
Mm-hmm.
And you are a shining example of that. Whereas you, as a kid, at the time, pressured because you had a mother, and then you loved hip hop, and you figured out the rhythms and the beats of your own life, and then put it to words, and then you showed up, and you kept showing up, you kept doing it, literally created nothing, created something out of nothing. So it's as miraculous as anything else.
Thank you,
Right?
man. I love that you said nothing before something. That's a poem too. I love you went, oh, you built it all up, and then you went, you created nothing. And I'm like, yes, exactly. That's exactly what I've created. Nothing. And it's so something. The nothing is is infinitely something.
Yeah.
You know, what are you most passionate about right now? I mean, you were talking about building your place and sustainability, but what is that itch for you right now that really lights you up?
Oh it's I could have chicken pox right now with all the itches that I have. Um, um, it is centered around. It's quite large, but it's centered around sovereignty, really,
Mm,
freedoms, and where some of those show up are real world solutions: water, power, food, shelter, and then the actual interwoven connectedness of freedoms of those things, right? So that I want everyone to have the ability and the experience and the alternatives to unleash and have a life that is full of freedom that they didn't normally have. So, and within that, I writing a book that's like, on the one hand, just weird because, I do this thing on my podcasts. I have one podcast like I am here, and I have another one where I investigate and research some fatal convenience, as I've called it. And that is, a cell phone putting up to your head. Great. You can call someone from around the world, but then you're putting EMFs to your head. Right. Is that a good idea? Personal care products, all this stuff. So food systems, digging into all of that stuff. I'm just like seeing like we actually have imploded in ourselves and are hurting ourselves as a society within all of these chemicals and systems that don't necessarily have our best interest. So on the one hand, I don't want to do that. But the bigger itch to it is that if it's not revealed, then it's hidden. And so it's hidden and it's causing harm. Literally, I just read, there's this chemical called PFOA or PFOSs. Literally, they found, and it's in plastic wrap, it's on waterproof clothing, wrinkle-free garments, you name it. It's in tons of things. It's called a forever chemical. And they now know that interacting with someone eating dietary fat is basically like pouring gasoline on cancer, right? So the interaction of the made up world and our world is infinitely worse than what we've even imagined. So what I'm saying, and a long way of saying, do I want to be that person talking about us, researching all the crazy shit that we're doing? Not really, but I do, because I'm looking at it. My father suffered from chemical sensitivity disorder in the 90s. I've said this story several times, but he was a keeper of the dragon in the Navy. He worked on atomic bombs. They literally call it keepers of the dragon. So his thyroid was toast. His immune system was shot. And he any sort of chemical he would get just wiped out from. And it just wore him down. And then he ended up dying of alcoholism. So in one way, the way our society is, there's a realism that I don't necessarily want to take. Or no, the realism I want to take so that we can liberate ourselves to doing something different. So I find myself in the middle of all of that and investigatively kind of trying to shine some light on that so we can be more free. Ultimately, it comes down to that freedom.
Yeah, I mean, when humanity is too close to the screen, we need people like you to back up so that we can see the actual picture instead of the pixels. So that's necessary. And I understand that feeling of desperately wanting to do that and also desperately not wanting to do that. But you feel called because of your life experiences and because of that inescapable whispering voice that you hear inside of you, to follow that enthusiasm. There's that saying of, every day you have to wake up and decide if you want to save the world or savor it. So my friend told me that saying years ago, and it always stayed with me. And then I don't remember who said it, so forgive me, you'll have to look that up. But then I was talking to him the other day, and he goes, that saying, You know, you wake up every day, you have to decide you want to save the world or savor it. He goes, that was only half the saying. The other half of the saying apparently is, well, if you don't savor it, you can't save it.
Wow.
I'm butchering the quote, but I think the concept is there. And so it's you striking that balance within yourself,
Mhm.
you know, for the life that you want to live. And everybody has their own razor's edge balance that they're striking on a day-to-day basis.
Totally. Yeah. It's almost like avoiding, trying to avoid a part of ourselves, which always comes back around and gets us. So it's like, on the one hand, I want people to eat plant-based and eat superfoods and be the best that they can and write books on that, and then bring them to the Netflix show and see how the great things we can do in the world. And all of that is still true, and I'm infinitely passionate. And so where the fatal convenience comes in is like, yeah, but you know that stuff is pulling people down from an world perspective, individual perspective, industry perspective. So this shadow that is so easily avoided is like, it's not letting me go. And it's probably my dad whispering from the afterlife going, hey, I suffered from it. Don't let others suffer from it.
Well, it's beautiful, man. I honor you in that.
Well, thank you.
Do you want to hear another poem? Maybe it's a good time for another poem. Do you have anything?
Let's end it on a good poem for sure.
Okay. Do you have anything that you would want to hear from the special, or I could just pick something that comes to mind?
Yeah, you pick it based on our whatever it is that we accomplished here.
Okay. Which is nothing.
Nothing. Exactly.
Let's see. Well, how about I do the one that I did at Rich's, because it feels like it makes some sort of sense. So I wrote this one during the pandemic, and it's kind of based on another saying that I really love, which is, I don't know who discovered water, but it probably wasn't a fish. And I love that saying, of course, because to me, it means you can't see your own environment when you're in it. And it's only when you get outside of it that you know that it exists. So maybe that's even what you're doing right now for yourself and for other people.
It's poking at the matrix, dude. Like, it's like, it's like, what do we want to do? You can't see from, if you're buried in the matrix. Like, you have to be able to have that ability to step out.
There is no spoon. But you got to eat chili. So what are you going to? No, you don't. You don't. Okay, here we go. Defining myself is like confining myself. So I undefined myself to find myself. They say a goldfish will only get as big as its bowl. But if you put it in a tank, the space can change the way it grows. It needs to have the room, or its potential doesn't show, so its environment's essential for unleashing the unknown. I ponder if it knows that it could grow beyond the bowl, that it could have a pond the size of an Olympic swimming pool, that the world is so much larger than the boundaries that it's known. Somehow I empathize with this little golden soul. Because I too have unexplored and unexpressed goals that were suppressed by an environment I couldn't control. Am I still playing small because it's all that I've known when there's a giant in my bones that I'm not sure I've ever shown? I ask myself this question when I'm purposely alone. When my body grows to take up all the rooms inside my home, I expand in all directions, every single inch consumed. I'm 1,000,000 feet tall now. I'm 1,000,000,000 feet tall now. My head over the moon. I look down on the earth as it slowly spins around. I look down on the countries and the cities and the towns. I look down on the square blocks and buildings all around. I look down on my street and rip the roof right off my house. I look down on myself sitting writing on my couch. Look, I barely pay attention. I'm the one that's looking down. How unaware I am of where I am. It's profound. So I put the roof back on and shrink myself back to the ground. It's crazy how I fit infinity inside my doubts, how I stuff the universe into the tiniest amounts, how I keep the solar system in the corner of my mouth, how I speak into existence but forget what I'm about. And most days, I'm not sure which side of the glass I've been on. I win a Grammy in the shower every time I sing a song, but when the spotlight is on, my first instinct's to run. I have to super glue my feet to even tell you where I'm from. I've been training for a quarantine since I was very young. For an introvert, it slightly hurts to tell you that they'll come. I would rather get into a staring contest with the sun, although I'll never see who fucking won. It's nature and its nurture, twisting into jungle life, fighting the competition, branching out to reach the light. I tried to listen, but could only hear my ancient heart. It screamed at me to make my life into my greatest art. But where to start? These walls are keeping people out and keeping people in. I guess it's good to know where someone ends and someone else begins. But our boundaries become prisons when we see what could have been. The biggest goldfish ever measured 18 inches, snout to fin. Defining myself is like confining myself. So I undefined myself, defined myself.
Oh, bam. Dude, so good.
Thanks.
I swear to I've heard that now 3 times at 3 different occasions, and I hear something different every time. It's so beautiful.
Thanks,
So,
man. I hear different things, you know, as I'm doing it as well. As I change, I relate to the pieces differently.
yeah, that's it.
You know, even putting them in the book, to be honest, you know, this book that's sitting in front of me, this physical thing that's in reality. I didn't feel like I was killing the pieces, you know, because they still evolve. They're living, breathing documents. So I put them into the book so they could have life for someone else, but they're always still alive for me, and they'll always change as I change.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Inquire Within, the book, people run out and get it. It's literally a work of art that NQ has put into that. And the show, come on, that show on Amazon is beautiful. It's quite beautiful. Dude, I just blew me away today. Thank you for your contributions and for your energy interwoven into words and sharing that with the world. It's magical, and I'm certainly grateful for it.
Well, thank you, Darin. I appreciate it, man. It was really great to chat with you, and I appreciate you sharing me with your community, and let's build more soon, man.
Definitely. We'll be in touch. You gotta let me know what's going on. We'll connect soon again for sure.
Sounds good.